Hello, esteemed gentlemen. A lion doesn't need to prove it's a lion, the jungle already knows. That's the difference between you and the rest. While others fight for attention, validation, and a place in the hierarchy, you stand alone, unbothered, unstoppable, and unfazed. Society may not always understand you, but that's because it fears what it cannot control. Here's a fact. Studies show that highly independent individuals often outperform their peers because they don't waste energy seeking approval. Translation? While others are busy peacocking for attention, you're quietly stacking wins, minding your business, and making power moves in the shadows. And yet, maybe you've been told you're too distant, too mysterious, or, God forbid, too intimidating. Maybe you've even questioned whether your detached, strategic approach to life is a strength or a flaw. Spoiler alert, it's your superpower. So before you start thinking you're the odd one out, let's set the record straight. You're not just a catch, you're the final boss in a world full of amateurs, and by the end of this, you'll know exactly why. Number 1. You are not motivated by lust, yet you attract it. Most men spend their entire lives chasing women. They blow their money on dates, send desperate late-night texts, and bend over backward just to get a shred of attention. But you don't play that game. You're not motivated by lust, and that makes you a walking paradox, because the less you chase, the more you attract. There's something dangerously intriguing about a man who isn't ruled by his desires. Women are used to men who trip over themselves trying to impress them. They're used to empty flattery, predictable advances, and the same recycled attempts at seduction. But when they meet a man who genuinely isn't pressed, who doesn't flinch when they test him, who isn't scrambling for their validation, it rattles them. They can't help but wonder, why isn't he acting like the rest? What does he know that they don't? It's not that you don't appreciate beauty or connection. It's that your mind is occupied with bigger things. You aren't the guy who sits around swiping endlessly on dating apps. You don't throw compliments at random women like darts, hoping one will stick. Your attention is expensive, and women can sense it. They notice how you carry yourself differently, how your focus is on your own mission, how you operate on your own terms, and that's a magnet. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Chasing something gives it power over you. The moment a man becomes desperate for attention, he loses all leverage. But a man who is self-contained, who doesn't need constant external validation, who moves with quiet confidence, that's rare. And what's rare is valuable. This is why you often see women falling for men who aren't even trying. The rock stars, the CEOs, the underground legends. What do they all have in common? They don't chase. They build, and in doing so, they naturally become the ones people chase. Your disinterest isn't an act. It's not some cheap dating tactic. It's who you are. You don't live for attention. You live for purpose. And that alone puts you leagues above the men who do nothing but chase shadows. Number 2, you are more of a threat than an alpha. Most people assume that the loudest man in the room is the most powerful. They see the alphas, the ones barking orders, flexing dominance, making sure everyone knows they're in charge, and they mistake volume for strength. But real power isn't loud. It's quiet, controlled, and precise. That's why you're more of a threat than any alpha could ever be. Alphas thrive on recognition. They want to be seen as the leader, the dominant force in any situation. They make noise because they need the world to acknowledge their position. But you move in silence. You don't waste energy proving yourself to people who don't matter. You don't need to remind anyone that you're in control, because control is something you hold internally, not something you perform. And that's exactly what makes you dangerous. A man who doesn't seek validation is unpredictable. He can't be manipulated through flattery, challenged into proving himself, or goaded into an unnecessary fight. While an alpha might lash out when provoked, you observe. You assess. You decide if something is even worth your time before you make a move. And when you do act, it's calculated, it's deliberate, it's devastating. This is the difference between a king on a battlefield and a king who plays chess. One fights because he has to constantly assert dominance. The other moves with precision, controlling outcomes long before anyone even realizes what's happening. You don't react emotionally, you don't swing wildly. You strike when it's necessary, and when you do, it's game over. People underestimate quiet men. They assume that if you're not making noise, you must not be a threat. But what they don't realize is that silence is a weapon. It forces others to second-guess, to wonder what you're thinking, to question their own moves. And nothing is more unnerving than an opponent who doesn't reveal his hand. An alpha wants the world to fear him. You don't care who fears you. You just ensure that those who cross you regret it. And that is the kind of power no amount of loudness can ever match. Number 3. You are the final boss in a world of NPCs. Most people are background characters in their own lives. They wake up, go to work, follow trends, repeat conversations they heard online, and let society dictate every move they make. They're predictable, programmed, and stuck in a cycle they never even questioned. These are the NPCs, non-playable characters, going through life on autopilot, convinced they have control when in reality they're just following a script. But you are the final boss. You don't follow the script because you were never part of the system to begin with. While the NPCs obey the invisible rules of society, what to wear, what to believe, what to say, you create your own path. You decide what matters. You set your own rules. And because of that, you're not just different. You're untouchable. People don't know how to handle someone who doesn't fit into their pre-written narrative. They're used to predictable responses, easy-to-read personalities, and men who can be categorized at a glance. But when they meet you, they hesitate. They don't know whether to admire you, fear you, or try to decode you, and that confusion, that's power. Women especially notice this. They're used to men playing predictable roles, either simping for attention or trying too hard to act dominant. But when they meet a man who isn't playing a role at all, who doesn't seek validation, who exists entirely on his own terms, it disrupts everything they thought they knew. You're not just another contender trying to win their favor. You're the main event, the outlier, the one who doesn't chase because you don't need to. The world is full of men who take orders, men who follow trends, men who need a map just to figure out where they're going. But you are the map. And that is why you are not just a catch. You are the final boss in a world of NPCs who will never understand what it means to be truly free. Number 4. You have a killer instinct. Society pretends doesn't exist. Society has spent decades trying to tame men. It teaches them to be agreeable, predictable, and safe. It tells them that aggression is bad, that competition is toxic, and that ambition needs to be toned down. It wants men who are easy to control, not ones who can think and act for themselves. And while most have fallen for this conditioning, you haven't. You still have an edge, a killer instinct that the modern world tries to pretend doesn't exist. This isn't about violence, it's about awareness, strategy, knowing when to strike and when to wait. While others hesitate, overthink, or look for permission, you trust your gut and make moves without second-guessing. It's the instinct that tells you when someone is lying before they even finish their sentence. The ability to read a room, spot the weak link, and anticipate threats before they arise. It's what separates you from the men who rely on rules to navigate life. You operate outside of them. In business, this means you don't get played. You see through the fluff, the fake smiles, the empty promises. You don't just listen to what people say, you watch what they do. You understand leverage, positioning, and the value of silence. Deals are won before they're even negotiated, and by the time your competition figures it out, it's already too late. In relationships, it means you don't fall for manipulation. You recognize red flags before they turn into disasters. You don't operate from a place of desperation, so you don't tolerate nonsense. While weaker men get strung along, used, or guilt-tripped into submission, you walk away without hesitation. Your presence is earned, not given. And when it comes to survival, you understand reality better than most. While society tries to convince men that strength doesn't matter, that instincts are outdated, and that everything will always be fair, you know better. You know that the world belongs to those who are prepared, who can adapt, who don't wait around hoping someone will save them. This is why you stand out. Not because you're louder, not because you seek attention, but because you move with an awareness that others don't. And when the moment comes to act, you don't hesitate. That's what makes you dangerous. Number 5, You are the exception, not the rule. Most people spend their entire lives trying to fit in. They follow the trends, say the right things, believe what they're told, and never question the script handed to them. Society rewards them for it, patting them on the back for being normal, for staying inside the lines, for being predictable. But you've never fit the mold, and that makes you an anomaly. And anomalies? They don't just stand out, they shift the entire game. The world is designed for conformity. Schools don't teach people how to think, they teach them what to think. Social norms aren't about individuality, they're about making sure everyone follows the same rules. Even success is packaged in a one-size-fits-all formula. Go to college, get a job, buy a house, retire quietly. It's a conveyor belt designed to create more of the same. But you were never built for the conveyor belt. You operate outside of expectations, outside of the system, outside of the limitations that most people accept without question. And that's why you are valuable. Society doesn't create systems for men like you because men like you don't need systems. You carve your own path. You break rules that don't make sense. You choose your own direction instead of following the herd. And the irony? The same people who once doubted you, who called you different or too detached, will be the first to admire you once they realize how far ahead you actually are. Most men are interchangeable. They say the same things, react the same way, follow the same patterns. They make it easy for the world to categorize them. But you can't be categorized. You can't be predicted. You don't fit into the neat little boxes that make people feel comfortable. And that disturbs them, because they can't control what they don't understand. This is why you don't chase approval, why you don't explain yourself, why you never bother trying to fit in, because the moment you do, you become just another number. And you were never meant to be part of the crowd, you were meant to be the exception. Number 6, you don't need permission to exist. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for permission to speak, to act, to take up space. They seek validation before making a move, constantly looking around to see if the world approves of them. Betas are desperate for acceptance, needing someone, anyone, to tell them they're enough. Alphas, on the other hand, demand recognition, flexing their dominance just to prove they're in control. But you don't ask, you don't demand, you just exist, on your own terms, in your own world, without needing approval from anyone. That kind of independence is intoxicating. When a man doesn't seek validation, people don't know how to handle him. They're used to men who play predictable roles, men who either try to please everyone or try to dominate everything. But a man who simply moves in silence, makes waves without announcing them, and operates without explaining himself. That's an anomaly. That's power. You don't need to prove your worth because you already know it. You don't beg for attention because attention naturally gravitates toward those who don't chase it. You don't engage in pointless dominance games because you see them for what they are. Distractions for people who need external validation to feel important. You're different because you aren't playing anyone else's game. You're playing your own. And here's what most people don't realize. When you stop asking for permission, the world stops being an obstacle. You don't wait to be chosen. You choose. You don't look for opportunities. You create them. You don't need someone else's approval to be who you are because your identity isn't up for negotiation. This is why you move differently. Why you make decisions without over-explaining. Why you never feel the need to justify yourself to people who haven't earned your energy. It's not arrogance, it's sovereignty. A man who doesn't need permission to exist is a man who cannot be controlled. And in a world full of people desperate to be led, that makes you the one thing they will never understand, but will always be drawn to. Number 7, you terrify weak people without even trying. Weak people thrive on control. Not through strength, but through manipulation. Guilt-tripping, emotional games, and subtle attempts to make others second-guess themselves. They need people who are easily influenced, who crave validation, who can be pressured into compliance. That's why you terrify them without even trying. Because you can't be controlled. You don't need approval. You don't seek permission. And you don't fall for cheap tactics designed to keep weaker men in line. When you walk into a room, insecure people feel it immediately. It's not because you're trying to be intimidating. It's because you radiate something they don't understand, self-reliance. They can't read you, and that unsettles them. You don't overshare. You don't react emotionally. You don't seek unnecessary conflict, but you also don't avoid it out of fear. Everything about you signals a man who answers to no one but himself. This is why manipulators struggle with you. They throw their usual tricks, passive-aggressive comments, guilt-laced accusations, backhanded compliments, and you don't flinch. You don't argue. You don't defend yourself. And you definitely don't seek their approval. Instead, you either shut it down or walk away, which is the one thing they can't handle. Because weak people feed off emotional reactions. They need to get inside your head to make you doubt yourself, to pull you into their drama. And when they realize they have zero power over you, it destroys them. But the most dangerous part, the more they fear you, the more they try to paint you as the villain. Weak people hate what they can't control, so they'll label you as cold, arrogant, or intimidating just because you refuse to bend to their games. They'll warn others about you, not because you're dangerous, but because you expose their weakness by simply existing. And here's the kicker. It's not your problem. You don't shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You don't explain yourself to those who will never understand. You move forward, unaffected, while they stay stuck in their own insecurities. Because at the end of the day, their fear of you is just a reflection of everything they lack. And deep down, they know it. Number 8. Your mystery is a currency. In a world where people broadcast their every move, overshare their emotions, and beg for attention online, mystery is a lost art. Everyone is so desperate to be seen that they don't realize how much value they destroy in the process. But you operate differently. You don't spill your thoughts to just anyone. You don't post your every win for clout. You don't seek validation through visibility. And that's why your mystery is a currency, because what's scarce is always more valuable. People can't figure you out, and that drives them insane. They're used to men who are easy to read, easy to manipulate, and easy to categorize. But when they meet someone who doesn't give everything away, who doesn't try to impress, who moves without explaining, their curiosity takes over. Who is he? What's his story? What is he thinking? The less you reveal, the more they crave access. And access to you? That's not something you hand out freely. This is why exclusivity matters. Anything that's widely available loses value, fast. The same way an elite black card isn't handed out to just anyone, your attention isn't either. People can want access to you, but that doesn't mean they qualify for it. And that is what separates you from the desperate masses. Most men think they need to be loud to be noticed. They believe that attention equals power, so they overexpose themselves, hoping for relevance. But power has never belonged to the ones who shout the loudest. It belongs to the ones who control access, the ones who make people wonder, the ones who don't reveal everything at once, if at all. And here's the truth. When something is rare, people respect it. They approach differently. They hesitate before speaking. They don't waste your time because they know they might not get another chance. That's the effect of being a man who doesn't overshare, over-explain, or overextend himself. So let the rest of the world chase attention like it's oxygen. You remain the enigma, the scarce resource, the man who doesn't just attract people but makes them earn the right to stay. Number 9. You don't play the status game. You play the long game. Most people are obsessed with the status game. They chase meaningless titles, flash wealth they don't really have, and beg for validation from people they don't even respect. Their entire identity is built on impressing others, whether through job titles, designer brands, or social media flexing. But you don't play that game. You're playing something far bigger. While they scramble for short-term recognition, you're quietly building an empire. The difference? You don't care about looking successful. You care about being successful. The loudest people in the room are usually the ones faking it. The guys who boast about their status, their power, or their connections are the same ones who crumble under pressure. That's because they're playing checkers, making impulsive moves to get quick attention. You, on the other hand, are playing chess, thinking 10 steps ahead, setting up long-term advantages, and making strategic sacrifices to win the real game. You understand that power isn't about flashy moments. It's about sustained dominance. A true king doesn't announce every move. He doesn't rush to prove himself. He builds in silence, stacking leverage while the rest waste their energy chasing applause. This is why, when you do make a move, it lands with force. Because it wasn't made for attention, it was made for impact. This mindset applies to everything: business, relationships, life. While other men chase quick wins, you invest in things that actually matter. You don't waste time impressing people today if it slows you down tomorrow. You don't seek status in a system you don't even respect. You focus on one thing: control over your own destiny. And that's why, years from now, when the status chasers have burnt out, trying to keep up with an image they couldn't sustain, you'll still be standing. Stronger, wealthier, and in complete control, because you didn't chase the illusion. You built the reality. Number 10. You are unpredictable, and that's power. People fear what they can't predict. The world is built on patterns, on men who follow routines, react the same way every time, and make themselves easy to read. That predictability is exactly why most men are so easy to control. Their emotions can be triggered, their next moves can be anticipated, and their weaknesses can be exploited. But you are a wild card, and that makes you dangerous. You don't operate on anyone's schedule but your own. You move in silence, shift directions when you see fit, and never explain yourself. One day you're fully engaged, the next, you vanish. Not out of emotion, not out of impulse, but because you simply don't owe anyone consistency. You answer only to yourself. This ability terrifies people, especially those who rely on control. They don't know how to handle a man who doesn't play by their rules, who doesn't react the way they expect, who can disappear without a trace and re-emerge on a whole new level. Your unpredictability forces them to stay on edge, constantly guessing, never sure where they stand with you. And that's power. Most men are desperate to be understood, to be figured out. They want people to get them, to recognize their value, to predict their next move and approve of it. You are the opposite. You don't need to be understood. In fact, you prefer to be misunderstood. Because when people think they have you figured out, they start underestimating you, and underestimation is your greatest weapon. You don't announce your plans. You don't seek permission. You make moves in the dark. So by the time people realize what's happening, it's already done. And when someone tries to trap you, control you, or put you in a box, you do the one thing they never expect. You walk away without a second thought. A man who can't be predicted can't be controlled. A man who can't be controlled is a man who wins. Number 11. You are comfortable being hated. Most people live in fear of being disliked. They walk on eggshells, adjust their opinions to fit the crowd, and bend over backward to stay in everyone's good graces. They think being liked equals being respected, but you know better. You've accepted something most men never will. Being hated is often the price of being truly free. You don't waste energy chasing approval because you understand a brutal truth. The more real you are, the more people will resent you. Your confidence will offend the insecure. Your independence will trigger the dependent. Your unwillingness to conform will make the herd uncomfortable, and that's fine. You're not here to be palatable. You're here to be undeniable. Weak men crumble under disapproval. They fear rejection, so they censor themselves, soften their edges, and live their lives as watered-down versions of who they could be. But the need to be liked is just another form of control. And a man who needs to be liked will always be a man who can be manipulated. You, on the other hand, are untouchable. You don't need everyone's approval, so no one has leverage over you. You say what you mean, do as you please, and refuse to explain yourself to people who were never going to understand you in the first place. And here's the paradox. The more comfortable you are being hated, the more respected you become. Because deep down, even your critics wish they had your level of detachment. The weak need validation. The strong create their own. And the ones who truly move the world, they're always polarizing. So let people misunderstand you. Let them talk. Let them project their insecurities onto you. Because at the end of the day, admiration and hatred are two sides of the same coin, and you don't need either to keep winning. Number 12. Your silence is a weapon. Most people are terrified of silence. They fill every gap with noise, arguing, explaining, defending, oversharing, because deep down they can't handle the weight of their own thoughts. They mistake talking for power, thinking the loudest voice wins. But you know better. You understand that silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a weapon. When you don't react, people panic. They're used to men who get emotional, who argue back, who feel the need to prove themselves. They rely on predictable responses because that's how they maintain control. But when you remain silent, they're left with only themselves, their own insecurities, doubts, and weaknesses. And nothing unsettles a person more than having to sit with their own unresolved issues. This is why manipulators hate men like you. They depend on emotional reactions to pull people into their games. They push buttons, waiting for you to snap, to engage, to play into their hands. But when you meet their tactics with pure, unshaken silence, they lose all power. Their words bounce off you like they never existed. Their accusations, their guilt trips, their provocations, none of it works. They end up arguing with themselves, spiraling into frustration, revealing just how weak they really are. Your silence also commands respect. While others beg for attention, you create demand by withholding yours. When you speak, people listen, because they know you wouldn't bother unless it actually mattered. That kind of presence is rare. In a world full of noise, a man who chooses when to speak and when to stay silent is a man in complete control. Most importantly, silence gives you the ultimate advantage, the ability to observe without revealing your hand. While others expose themselves through endless talking, you gather information. You see who is insecure, who is seeking approval, who is trying to manipulate, and who is genuinely worth your time. So let the world keep arguing, keep shouting, keep proving itself. You don't need to. Because the man who controls his silence controls the room. At the end of the day, you are the outlier, the man who doesn't fit neatly into society's expectations, who can't be controlled, who moves on his own terms. You don't play for attention, you don't beg for approval, and you sure as hell don't explain yourself. And that makes you a rare breed. While the rest of the world is trapped in cycles of validation, predictability, and fear of being disliked, you operate above it all. Your silence commands more respect than another man's shouting. Your mystery holds more value than another man's oversharing. Your ability to walk away, without hesitation, without explanation, makes you more powerful than any title or social status ever could. This is why you're a freaking catch. Not because you seek to prove it, but because your very existence proves itself. You're the exception in a world designed for conformity. You don't follow trends, you outlast them. You don't fight for a seat at someone else's table, you build your own. And most importantly, you don't chase, you attract. People will misunderstand you. They will fear what they can't predict. They will be frustrated by your refusal to be controlled. Let them. Because while they waste their energy trying to decode you, you'll be too busy winning. If this hit home, if you see yourself in every word, then you already know you're not like the rest. And that's exactly why you belong here. This channel is for the few, not the many. The ones who move differently, think independently, and refuse to be just another face in the crowd. So if you're done with the noise, the weak mindsets, and the constant chase for validation, hit that subscribe button. Like the video, drop a comment, and let the world know that the Sigma mindset isn't just an idea, it's a way of life. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. This is just the beginning. Welcome to the ones who don't fit in, because we were never meant to.